Imagine coming across an ancient text that millions of people have revered for millennia, convinced it holds every answer about life, the universe, and a higher power. Then, as you begin to explore its pages, you sense a striking contrast. Some passages, God is a loving protector, healing the broken and embracing the lost. In others, he appears as a stern judge, commanding battles, invoking fear, and punishing entire nations. How can these two vastly different versions of the divine coexist in the same sacred volume? For centuries, certain groups questioned whether these polar opposites were actually one and the same. Early Christian offshoots, like the Gnostics, believed that the vengeful, controlling God depicted in some biblical stories was not the true, supreme creator, but a flawed power intent on keeping humanity bound by ignorance. Their radical view challenged the prevailing doctrine. There must be a hidden, greater source of light and wisdom that stands in stark contrast to wrathful portrayals. Over time, these heretical perspectives were systematically suppressed. Powerful councils and religious authorities excluded entire texts from the biblical canon, deeming their messages too dangerous or liberating. But why would they do that? Could it be that these forbidden writings encouraged self-discovery and personal awakening rather than blind obedience? And is there still a spark of this hidden teaching alive today, waiting to be rediscovered? In this video, we'll delve into a riveting tale of ancient controversies, secret texts, and spiritual perspectives that were silenced for centuries. We'll explore how the Council of Nicaea, backed by an emperor's ambition, reshaped faith, and why the knowledge of our own inner spark might threaten institutions built on uniformity. By the end, you might find yourself asking, are we truly seeing the whole picture? Or have fragments of the spiritual puzzle been hidden away from us all along? One of the most perplexing things about the Bible, for countless believers and curious readers alike, is its portrayal of a God who seems to have two distinct personalities. In the Old Testament, we witness stories of Yahweh demanding absolute loyalty, striking people down and punishing entire cities for their wrongdoing. On the other hand, the New Testament's message centers on compassion and forgiveness, revealed especially through the teachings of Jesus. This stark contrast has puzzled scholars for centuries. Some have reasoned that God's severe actions were necessary in ancient contexts, while others suggest that human interpretation might have muddled the original intent. But there's also a once silenced perspective, one championed by certain early believers who claimed these portrayals couldn't possibly come from a single, ultimate creator. Instead, they saw the Old Testament's wrathful deity as a demiurge, a lesser power who formed the physical world but failed to grasp the full scope of divine love. That concept shattered the traditional view of a seamless narrative. If the demiurge, not the true God, was responsible for destruction and fear, then the hidden God behind all existence was one of light, knowledge, and liberation. From this perspective, key biblical episodes reflect a cosmic drama between ignorance and illumination. Yet, such notions threaten to undermine the authority of emerging Christian institutions who relied on a single, unified version of truth to bind communities together. Early voices championing an alternative theology were increasingly labeled heretics. In the end, their teachings were marginalized, their writings lost, or sometimes deliberately destroyed. From the very dawn of Christianity, there was no single consensus on how to interpret the life and message of Jesus. Different groups sprouted across the Mediterranean world, each blending traditional Jewish beliefs, Greek philosophical ideas, and unique insights about the nature of God. Among these groups were the Gnostics, a diverse collection of communities deeply focused on spiritual enlightenment. They didn't just believe in a mystical deity, but sought first-hand knowledge, or gnosis, through inner awakening. For the Gnostics, the divine spark wasn't a distant phenomenon locked behind altars or institutions. They believed each person carried a hidden piece of the true God within. Liberation, in their eyes, came not from blind obedience to rigid doctrine, but from unfolding awareness that pierced the veil of earthly illusion, the Old Testament's violent tales which they attributed to a lesser God seeking control stood in sharp contrast to the teachings of Jesus, who they saw as a messenger of pure truth, urging humanity to reclaim its divine heritage. Naturally, this standpoint raised alarms for those who insisted on a uniform faith. Early bishops and theologians worried that if everyone found direct communion with God independently, who would need organized religion or hierarchies? Documents, such as the Gospel of Thomas, hinted that Jesus' mission was to reveal the kingdom within each human heart, rather than establish an external power structure. If that message took root broadly, the entire edifice of authority in church politics could crumble. So, over time, a systematic campaign to dismiss and eradicate these subversive ideas began to take shape. Fast forward to the early 4th century. Emperor Constantine the Great saw in Christianity a potent tool for unifying his sprawling empire. But this religion was a patchwork of interpretations and factions, hardly the cohesive force he wanted. In 325 AD, he convened the Council of Nicaea, a gathering of church leaders tasked with reaching doctrinal consensus. Although this gathering would define theological truths, it was also steeped in political strategy. During this council, the Nicene Creed was formulated, declaring Jesus as fully divine and fully human. This had profound implications. By officially uniting God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in the Trinity, the Church staked a claim on a single orthodox framework. Any teachings contradicting that stance became, by definition, heretical. It was a political triumph. Constantine gained a tighter grip on his realm, as the Church, in turn, gained imperial backing to repress dissenters. Quietly in the shadows, other texts, ones that might present different ideas about Jesus, salvation, or God's nature, were being set aside. Once the council endorsed certain narratives as canonical and certain doctrines as irrevocable, alternate paths to the divine appeared not just incorrect, but dangerously subversive. By labeling certain books and beliefs as heresy, the Church ensured its followers would look to recognized clerical authorities for guidance, cementing a structure that centralized power. In effect, the Council of Nicaea became a monumental turning point, bridging state interests with religious doctrine and setting the stage for a new era in which spiritual knowledge was increasingly regulated by official decree. After Nicaea, church leaders solidified their victory over divergent beliefs. Over the following decades and centuries, texts that contradicted the newly accepted canon vanished from public view. Some were intentionally burned, others were hidden by believers who feared persecution. Later, when archaeologists uncovered troves like the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt, the world glimpsed what had been silenced for so long: Gnostic gospels, mystical writings, and alternative accounts of Jesus' teachings. These discoveries provided a jolt to religious scholarship. The Gospel of Thomas, for example, didn't depict Jesus as merely a dying savior, but as a living guide who reveals humanity's capacity for awakening. The Gospel of Philip explored esoteric rites and symbolic language, suggesting that the path to God was personal and experiential. Such content challenged centuries of established doctrine. Most startling of all, they painted a portrait of early Christians far more diverse and spiritually adventurous than official history had let on. But in an age when the Church was synonymous with order and tradition, these rediscovered ideas represented chaos. If anyone could read and interpret lost manuscripts, how could the Church maintain a monopoly on truth? The tension between institutional authority and personal discovery lingers to this day. In that tension lies a question for every seeker of truth. Are we willing to look beyond the boundaries set by centuries of orthodoxy, risking social or spiritual upheaval in our quest for a more direct experience of the divine? Institutional power often collides with spiritual freedom when new teachings threaten the status quo. This pattern appeared not just in the early Church, but throughout the Middle Ages. The Cathars of southern France, for instance, adopted beliefs reminiscent of Gnostic ideas, viewing the Old Testament's violent deity as inferior to a higher principle of love. Their emphasis on individual purity and disdain for material corruption challenged the Church's temporal power. The Church responded with brutal force in the Albigensian Crusade, annihilating communities in the name of defending Orthodox faith. Yet, with each repression, the underlying question loomed larger. If the true God is boundless love, why would he sanction violence and oppression? For dissenting groups, the answer was plain. The wrathful deity championed by religious institutions was not the same as the hidden God of grace they sensed in their hearts. Such a stance, even if grounded in peace and piety, threatened to shatter the Church's carefully constructed unity. Through these conflicts, the Gnostic belief in an inner divine spark never fully disappeared. Instead, it smoldered underground, passed along by secret communities, mystics, and esoteric scholars. Today, many modern seekers resonate with the idea that genuine faith shouldn't be confined to rote obedience, but discovered through personal revelation. It's a notion that's both thrilling and unsettling. Thrilling because it hands each individual the key to transcendence. Unsettling because it dismantles the safety net of relying on external authorities to define spiritual truths. In recent decades, the hidden texts found in buried jars and dusty caves have sparked renewed discussions about what Christianity might have looked like before orthodoxy swept in. The message in many of these writings is both revolutionary and empowering. Each person is capable of direct contact with the divine. The God of absolute love and wisdom was always accessible, not locked behind priestly rites or imperial creeds. This resonates powerfully in our modern world, where many people yearn for authentic connection and personal growth. The notion of a liberating God who resides within us offers hope to those who have felt alienated by rigid dogma. It speaks to a fundamental longing, a call from deep within our soul, urging us to remember that we carry sacredness in our very being. However, such liberation also involves facing fear. The fear of stepping away from inherited beliefs and risking ostracism, or the fear of discovering that true responsibility for spiritual growth rests in our own hands. Yet as countless mystics and seekers have attested, the journey inward can be a profound awakening. By rekindling the ancient teachings once deemed too dangerous, we may find ourselves closer to a God who transcends the boundaries of punishment and control. If you're feeling a spark of curiosity, if you sense that there's more to faith than what you've been told, consider diving deeper into these hidden traditions. You'll find, perhaps for the first time, that the truths your heart has always suspected might be waiting for you in the forbidden books, the overlooked stories, and your own inner experience. This story of hidden manuscripts, forbidden doctrines, and contrasting portrayals of God serves as a mirror for our spiritual journey. Throughout history, powerful institutions have often shaped the narrative, selecting which voices deserve amplification and which must be hushed. But the enduring echo of those silenced voices reminds us that truth can never be fully extinguished. It merely goes underground, awaiting rediscovery. In your life, you might have sensed that the divine is bigger, kinder, and more profound than any one text or tradition could capture. And maybe, just maybe, that is the whisper of the higher, hidden creator calling you to look beyond the surface. You don't have to discard your existing faith or identity, but you might find new depth if you allow yourself to explore alternative perspectives, especially those once labeled as heresy. After all, if each of us carries a spark of the true God within, then awakening to it could become our grand collective calling. Thank you for joining this exploration. If you found these revelations intriguing or empowering, remember that spirituality is a living practice, one that thrives on curiosity, openness, and a willingness to grow. If you are seeking deeper clarity, there is a special ebook you can download, available as a gift in the first comment. It might just be the guide you need at this crossroads in your journey. Stay curious, stay open, and I'll see you in the next video.